Thank you. Now we're going to share the screen. Okay. Well, hello, one and all. We're going to continue our deep dive into visualization meditation. I hope you are getting a firmer idea of the benefit of this type of meditation because it's very powerful, as you can see. And we're going to continue to work with it because it's fundamental, and as you're learning, is a core part of how we live. There are certain meditations that we've covered that are for specific times and places, such as the Amida. That's for, davening and so on. And there's a time and place where you might want to do mantra meditation and so on. But visualization meditation is something we do all the time. We just don't call it meditation. So since it's part and parcel of our daily living, and for that matter, probably our sleeping with our dreaming, which is kind of visualization, we're going to really try to get a good grasp on it. Okay, so how do we get started? Rabbi Kaplan did mention the importance of visualization in relations between a man and a woman. And he talked about how it enhances pleasure and connection. We then looked at some detail that he provides with regards to how you visualize. And he gave a kind of like some detail, but kind of general categories. He talked about engraving an image in your mind on the screen of your mind's eye, and then hewing away any clutter that tries to distract you from that. That's a fundamental technique, engraving and hewing. Then we looked at a success tip by an expert named Bali Gill, who introduced us to the idea of energizing your vision, putting your whole body and soul, all your emotions into it to make it feel alive for you, to make it a real experience as part of your as far as your body was concerned. And then we looked at Maxwell Maltz, and he gave us some examples of that. If you recall, he talked about that experiment with the basketball free throws with the three groups. And remarkably, the group that had visualized sinking basketball free throws improved virtually as much as the group that practiced physically throwing basketball free throws. And that's an indication of the power of the mind and the power of visualization. And the whole premise of that was that as far as your body is concerned, your mind runs things. So whether you're sending stimuli to your body, specifically through your mind internally, or what you experience in the world, it's one and the same to your body. So that shows us that if we can visualize as realistically as possible, as far as your body's concerned, it's virtually the same thing as doing something with your body. So your body is really trainable, and it's just a question of having the proper visualization to train it with. Okay. And we're going to keep going over that. And just as another remarkable example of this, Maxwell Maltz gave us the example of the concert pianist. And he mentioned as follows. He said that Arthur Schnabel, the world famous concert pianist, took lessons for only 7 years. He hated practice and seldom practiced for any length of time at the actual piano keyboard. When questioned about his small amount of practice, as compared with other concert pianists, he said, "I practice in my head." And that seems to be a very common mode of practice for elite performers. They practice in their head. But understanding that what they're visualizing in their head is really real. So that illustrates the potency a visualization, but it also illustrates the effort that's involved to be able to visualize at that level. Okay. And getting back to Rabbi Kaplan even said that you can get to a level where you're affecting, or a couple that's going to procreate is actually going to affect the genetic makeup of their offspring. That's powerful. Plus, he mentioned Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, doing genetic engineering through his mind, and this deal he made with Lavan, his father-in-law. All right, so we're getting a little tiny taste of the potency of visualization, but I want to see how far we can progress and really get a grasp on it. So that's why we're going to keep working at it. Okay. So today we're going to talk about what Maxwell Maltz calls your secret blueprint. Okay, what is that all about? Let's take a look. Okay. Here we are, mental blueprint. Now, this starts with, I would argue that the most important psychological discovery, he's speaking as Maxwell Maltz, but it's really the words of Dan Kennedy, one of his proteges, and who took over the Maxwell Maltz Psycho-Cybernetics empire. So he's a top student of Maxwell Maltz, and for this new edition, he's speaking as if it's Maxwell Maltz, but we understand this was first issued in 1960, so it was 40 years after Maxwell Maltz first introduced the idea of psycho-cybernetics. Okay, so what did he say? What does Dan say speaking as Dr. Maltz? I would argue, says he, that the most important psychological discovery of modern times is the discovery of the self-image. By understanding your self-image and by learning to modify it and manage it to suit your purposes, you gain incredible confidence and power. Whether we realize it or not, each of us carries within us a mental blueprint or picture of ourselves. It may be vague and ill-defined to our conscious gaze. In fact, it may not be consciously recognizable at all, but it is there, complete down to the last detail. This self-image is our own conception of the sort of person I am. It has been built up from our own beliefs about ourselves. Most of these beliefs about ourselves have unconsciously been formed from our past experiences, our successes and failures, our humiliations, our triumphs, and the way other people have reacted to us, especially in early childhood. Once an idea or a belief about ourselves goes into this picture, it becomes truth as far as we personally are concerned. We do not question its validity, but proceed to act upon it just as if it were true. The self-image then controls what you can and cannot accomplish, what is difficult or easy for you, even how others respond to you just as certainly and scientifically as a thermostat controls the temperature in your home. Specifically, all your actions, feelings, behavior, even your abilities are always consistent with this self-image. Note the word always. In short, you will act like the sort of person you conceive yourself to be. More important, you literally cannot act otherwise in spite of all your conscious efforts or willpower. This is why trying to achieve something difficult with teeth gritted is a losing battle. Willpower is not the answer, self-image management is. Okay, now, 2 points. First of all, I'm introducing this idea of self-image because it's integral to the visualization you have, meaning that if you want to visualize yourself as a success in certain way in a certain area, if you have an idea that you're a loser, it's never going to work. You have to believe that you are a success in order to have a success fantasy or visualization. That pretty much makes sense to me. Number two, the other thing that's really interesting about the development of self-image, which we'll get to at a later point, but I'm going to give you a taste of it, is that he says that self-image is a product of three factors. It's repetition, authority, or high impact, meaning, let's say authority. If somebody that has a lot of authority says, you're good, or you're bad, or you're a stupid student, you're a very bad student. If the teacher that you really revere says, you're a really bad student, you're going to walk away thinking you're a really bad student. Authority has conversely, if you have a teacher or an authority figure, let's say a parent says, boy, you're great, you really try hard, you're a winner, you're going to think that way. Number two, as far as repetition, kids being mean, you're a jerk, if you constantly get kids saying the same thing about you, you're going to walk away thinking that's me. And high impact, he talks about how you could have a very traumatic experience, either positive or negative, and you're going to walk away thinking something about yourself. If you fight the local bully and you beat him, then you're going to walk away thinking I'm a winner. If you fight the local bully and he beats you senseless, you're going to walk away thinking you're a loser, type of thing. So authority, repetition, and impact. These are the influences in some combination, sometimes one more than another, that has you believing something about yourself, self-image. Okay. So now we're going to. So now let's go right here. Snapback effect. The person who has a fat self-image, whose self-image claims to have a sweet tooth, to be unable to resist junk foods, who cannot find the time to exercise, will be unable to lose weight and keep it off no matter what he tries to do consciously in opposition to that self-image. You cannot long outperform or escape your self-image. If you do escape briefly, you'll be snapped back like a rubber band extended between two fingers coming loose from one. That's true. I'll give you another example of this. At the Blue Dragon, Sifu used to talk about how you have to become a different person if you're going to be able to fight using Bagua. Because nobody goes into that school knowing Bagua. They come in knowing street fighting, or they come in knowing Taekwondo, or they come in knowing another type of Kung Fu. And you can't just go to a few classes and say, all right, now I know Bagua. It has to develop you have to reinvent yourself as somebody that does Bagua. And depending on who you are and where you've been and stuff like this, it could take a very long time. It took me years. And I just celebrated my 11th anniversary. It took me years to get over the fact that I'm no longer a street fighter. And I hadn't had a street fight in decades when I started the Blue Dragon, but that's the first thing that came to mind when we started combat drills. And I'm like, all right, I'm a street fighter. And I had to work so hard over so long to drop that image of myself. Say, no, I do Bagua. That's an example. So self-image is deep. But he's right. If you have an image of yourself like, well, I just like my sweets or whatever, then You're never going to be able to kick the habit. Okay. The person who perceives himself to be a failure type person will find some way to fail in spite of all his good intentions or his willpower, even if opportunity is literally dumped in his lap. The person who conceives himself to be a victim of injustice, one who was meant to suffer, will invariably find circumstances to verify his opinions. You can insert any specific into this: your golf game, sales career, public speaking, weight loss, relationships. The control of your self-image is absolute and pervasive. The snapback effect is universal. The self-image is a premise, a base, or a foundation upon which your entire personality, your behavior, and even your circumstances are built. As a result, our experiences seem to verify and thereby strengthen our self-images, and either a vicious or a beneficent cycle, as the case may be, is set up. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you're a loser, you're going to keep losing. If you believe you're a winner, you're going to keep winning. Why? Because you're going to look, if you're a winner, you're going to look for situations in which you can win. If you're a loser, you're going to look for situations in which you're going to lose. And we all know of a zillion examples of that. What about the woman that keeps marrying bad men and she keeps getting smacked around? Unfortunately, she's like, that's all I deserve. That's like common knowledge, that kind of stuff. And the only reason why she keeps repeating that is because of who she thinks she is and what she thinks she deserves. For example, a student who sees himself as an F-type student, or one who is dumb in mathematics, will invariably find that his report card bears him out. He then has proof. In the same manner, a sales professional or an entrepreneur will also find that her actual experiences tend to prove that her self-image is correct. Whatever is difficult for you, whatever frustrations you have in your life, they are likely proving and reinforcing something ingrained in your self-image, like a groove in a record. Now, I'm going to give you a toy example of this. You had the incident of the spies. Spies do a scouting mission in the promised land. They come back and two come back with a good report. And the good report was, hey, we can do this. 10 of them come by and say, no, this is no good. We can't do this. And the kahila, the congregation, the Jewish people said, oh, yeah, you're right. We can't do this. And they had this image of themselves as not being up to the task that God had given them. It was like, go to the land. That's the deal here. And so they had to spend 40 years in the desert and re-imaging themselves as people who were B'nai Yisrael and worthy of fulfilling this mission of inheriting the promised land. And it's not just that the Egyptian, we hold that the generation from Egypt had this certain mindset that wasn't ready to take on the legacy that we were given. We had to go through a whole generation and a whole different view of ourselves for Joshua to then lead us to the promised land. 40 years it took for now a nation of several million to be able to say, we can do this. That's an example. And God in his wisdom said, you guys just aren't ready. I can see what's going on with these spies. These guys come back, you listen to the negative report, you buy into that. Obviously, you can't hack it. What are you going to do when you're tested, when you go to the promised land and people say, what are you Jews doing here? They're going to say, oh, yeah, you're right. We're not supposed to be here. We don't deserve it. All right, sorry, we'll go now. What's that going to do? So God wanted people going to stay there and say, yeah, well, we deserve to be here. Sorry. Okay. How's that? Okay, because of this objective proof, meaning the self-fulfilling prophecy, it very seldom occurs to us that our trouble lies in our self-image or our own evaluation of ourselves. Tell the student that he only thinks he cannot master algebra, and he will doubt your sanity. He has tried, and still his report card tells the story. Tell the sales agent that it is only an idea that she cannot earn more than a certain figure, and she can prove you wrong by her order book. She knows only too well how hard she has tried and failed, yet, as we shall see, almost miraculous changes have occurred both in grades of students and the earning capacity of salespeople once they were prevailed upon to change their self-image. Obviously, it's not enough to say it's all in your head. In fact, that's insulting. It is more productive to explain that it is based on certain ingrained, possibly hidden patterns of thought that, if altered, will free you to tap more of your potential and experience vastly different results. This brings me to the most important truth about the self-image: it can be changed. Key words here: hidden pattern, ingrained, hidden patterns of thought. Sifu talks a lot about rewiring your brain. If you do certain things, you will be rewiring your brain towards a better outcome. Like one thing the Rambam talks about is becoming like a charitable person. How do you become a more charitable person? It's not like you write a check at the end of the year to get a tax deduction. You put money in the pushka every day. Money in the pushka every day. You develop the habit of giving to charity, and you become a different person, a more charitable person by doing that. It's the action that rewires you. Okay, so it's possible to do this. Numerous case histories have shown that you are never too young or too old to change your self-image and start to live a new, amazingly different life. Okay. Can everybody see these two boxes? Somebody nod their head if you can see these two boxes. All right, they're not too good. Okay.
Not easily.
What?
Not easily.
Not easily. All right, I wish I had a blow up of this. All right, what he's basically saying is, here's you, and here's your potential around you. And most people barely stretch out and reach their potential. Maybe they go a little bit. They don't come close to achieving it because of this problem right here. They don't believe they can. They don't believe they can. Okay. So that's where we are right here. So just to backtrack for a second, what he's saying is really interesting. So now, let's suppose you are visualizing yourself doing something that you want to achieve. Getting back to Rabbi Kaplan's idea, remember we talked about visualization for a couple. How could they possibly visualize having good engagement if they really don't think, if one of them really doesn't believe they're worthy of having a good engagement? Meaning they're sitting down and they're like, all right, let's try to really connect tonight. But he's thinking, like, in the back of his mind, I don't know, it's like, I don't really feel that loved, or am I worthy of love, or whatever the syndrome is. That's not going to work. So you could see that they could have every intent in the world about trying to connect, but if he or she or both have this like inferiority complex, or what Maltz is calling the bad self, the negative self-image, the visualization is not going to go anywhere. They have to first reinvent their idea of who they are. It's like, no, I am worthy of that. Yes, I deserve a good connection. Even though my father says I'm a bum, I deserve a good connection. So you get through that stuff, and then now you're ready to go deep. So that shows the connection between self-image and who you think you are, and what you can visualize and really make it real. Because if you don't have a good self-image and you try to make it real, you're never going to be able to invest yourself, like Bali Gill says. You're never going to be able to, in your mind, go for it, because there's going to be something holding you back. And what's going to be holding you back is your belief that, no, I'm not worth it, or I don't deserve it, or that's not for me, it's never going to work, blah, 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 blah. So the psychological angle is really key to having a successful visualization. And if you can't energize it with all your heart, with all your soul, with all you, then you realize you got a little bit of internal work to do first. And you fix that, and then you just launch yourself into it. I think that's very important for us to keep in mind. Okay. I hope you think this is as cool as I think it is. All right, let's do a little bit of Bhante. Bhante. He's been talking about mindfulness versus concentration. And this is what he says. We are right here. Mindfulness is a broader and larger function than concentration. It is an all-encompassing function. Concentration is exclusive. It settles down on one item and ignores everything else. Focus, focus, focus. Mindfulness is inclusive. It stands back from the focus of attention and watches with a broad focus, quick to notice any change that occurs. If you have focused the mind on a stone, concentration will see only the stone. Mindfulness stands back from this process, aware of the stone, aware of concentration, focusing on the stone, aware of the intensity of that focus, and instantly aware of the shift of attention when concentration is distracted. It is mindfulness that notices that the distraction has occurred, and it is mindfulness that redirects the attention to the stone. Hopefully this is clearing things up. Mindfulness is more difficult to cultivate than concentration because it is a deeper reaching function. Concentration is merely focusing the mind, rather like a laser beam. It has the power to burn its way deep into the mind and illuminate what is there, but it does not understand what it sees. Mindfulness can examine the mechanics of selfishness and understand what it sees. Mindfulness can pierce the mystery of suffering and the mechanism of discomfort. Mindfulness can make you free. There is, however, another catch-22. Mindfulness does not react to what it sees. It just sees and understands. Mindfulness is the essence of patience. Therefore, whatever you see must simply be accepted, acknowledged, and dispassionately observed. This is not easy, but it is utterly necessary. We are ignorant, we are selfish and greedy and beautiful, we lust, we lie. These are facts. Mindfulness means seeing these facts and being patient with ourselves, accepting ourselves as we are. That goes against the grain. We don't want to accept it. We want to deny it or change it or justify it. But acceptance is the essence of mindfulness. If we want to grow in mindfulness, we must accept what mindfulness finds. It may be boredom, irritation, or fear. It may be weakness, inadequacy, or faults. Whatever it is, that is the way we are. That is what is real. Okay. So this applies really well to what we just discussed with Maxwell Maltz. If you are having a discussion with somebody about improving your relationship, and you both want to go there, and you feel like there's a certain reluctance, you have to face into what is that reluctance. You have to be mindful of whatever internal mechanism it is that's holding you back. You can't deny it. You can't minimize it. Like, I got this big issue because I think I'm a dum-dum. You got to admit that, okay? Mindfulness allows you to say, yep, that's me. And the concentration comes in right now. I'm going to focus on my feeling of being a dum-dum and see what I could do about that. But it was mindfulness that helped you accept that in the first place and realize about yourself. That's how they work. Mindfulness is inclusive, and that's what I got to think about. And then the concentration comes in, boom. So like when we meditate, we're trying to focus on the breath. We're mindful of everything else, and then we got to decide, no, I got to go back to the breath. Up, thinking about pizza. Mindfulness makes you realize you're thinking about the pizza pie. But the concentration says, up, back to the breath. That's what it's all about. Okay. So speaking of meditation, that's exactly what we're going to do right now. Okay. Margaret.